I would get out of that city. And I know you don't want to hear that and you don't want to go, but that is, they're coming for you. Is this Donald Trump executive order the end of the world for nomads? Will it impact us? Will it impact us a lot, a little, or a lot? Hi everyone, welcome back to my next video. There is a lot of discussion going around on YouTube and on all social media right now about a recent executive order that Donald Trump put out about homelessness and particularly homeless encampments. And so there's been a lot of discussion about what will its impact be on us nomads. And so I want to answer that question for you today. This order is almost entirely about what goes on inside cities. I'll show you here in a minute. We're going to look at the whole order. And that's so important that you understand this. None of this stuff is being done in the dark. If somebody comes up, there's a new bill in Congress that's the end of the world. Well, you can go and read that bill. Do you know that? It's not that hard to find. Sometimes it takes a little sleuth work. I'll admit it. This took none. I did a Google search on Trump, executive order, camping. That's 4 words I typed in, and it popped right up. And so you can go do that too. So don't get caught up on what YouTubers say. Don't get caught up in what I say. Go prove it for yourself. None of this stuff is so hard that you can't understand it. First, the most important thing to understand about this is that in our system of government, a constitutional republic, all the power is divided in the Constitution between the cities, the states, and the federal government. And in the federal government, and in each one of them, the power in that entity, the power in the federal government, is divided up even further to create checks and balances so that nobody gets too powerful. That's the whole goal of this entire country. Nobody gets too powerful. When it comes to city, state, and federal, cities are in a lot of ways virtually sovereign. States in most ways are sovereign. And then a certain number of powers are designated to the federal government. When it comes to homelessness in the city, the federal government has very little control or power. Donald Trump really has very little control or power. Mainly what he can do is direct funding, and that's how the federal government has really, whether Democrat or Republican, I'm going to avoid politics. I don't want to do any politics here. Whether Democratic or Republican, the federal government has used money to control the states. I think that's a completely fair statement. Well, that's basically exactly what this executive order, Trump's executive order, does. And again, this is the standard operating procedure for the federal government. There's nothing terribly unusual about it. He's very specific in what he wants done, and there's a list of basically of take money away from these people who are doing this that he doesn't want done and give it to these people who are doing what I want done, and then he gives you lists of what those things are. That's what the most of this document is. And is this the solution? I don't believe this is. But here's the solution. For all the sides to sit down and in good faith talk about it. What can we do to fix this? Let's go back up a little bit to a recent Supreme Court decision. In June of 2024, the United States Supreme Court, which is basically Trump's court that he's appointed, very conservative, overrode some previous decisions that allowed cities to arrest homeless people in encampments. But you think, well, couldn't they always do that? No, before it was pretty limited. The order before then, the courts had ordered that if the city did not offer enough beds to get you off of the streets, then you could not arrest people. That was the issue. That was the issue that came to the court in June of 2024. And so at any rate, this court ordered that yes, you can. Just because you're not offering enough beds for the homeless, you can still arrest people for breaking the law of sleeping on the city streets. And since then, since June of 2024, cities and states across the country have been rewriting laws, putting out new laws, and it's becoming very, very hard. And that change in the laws has allowed Donald Trump to issue this executive order. Again, because he's going federal government encroaching on what's decided at the city level, he has very little power. We'll look at what he does specifically try to do. So before we do that, let's answer this very simple question. Will this impact me as a nomad? And unless you live in a city and sleep on city streets or even anywhere in a city. I mean, there are a lot of places where if you're sleeping in a Walmart, this could still very negatively impact you. You could be arrested and evaluated for mental illness. Yes, if you are a nomad and you are stealthing in a city, you could get caught up in the web of we're gathering up all the homeless and shoving them out, or we're locking them up. Is it possible that you could get caught up in that web? Yes. If you are stealthing in a city somewhere, and you know that that city is having a big problem with homelessness, with encampments, I would get out of that city. And I know you don't want to hear that and you don't want to go, but they're coming for you because it's a huge problem. And when I'm a citizen in a city and there are homeless encampments everywhere, I don't want that. No one wants that. No one wants that. We all want a solution. There is no solution. So what are we going to do? A lot of people are going to call their assembly person or the mayor or somebody and say, I'm not going to vote for you unless you fix that. And then they're going to do something, and they're going to cast a web and lock them up or push them out, or I don't know, they're going to do something. And yes, if you are living in your vehicle in a city, you could get caught up in that web. And I would leave and go somewhere where that isn't their attitude, where it isn't a really big problem, where it's very unlikely I could get caught up in that web. On the other hand, if you're like me, and if you're out on public land, this order has no impact on you whatsoever. If you are dispersed camping on BLM or national forest land, or maybe probably even state land, this is not going to have any impact. Zero, no influence on van life, no influence on me. There's not a word in this that I can find about national forest land or BLM land. It just doesn't impact us. It is strictly cities. We're going to look at the document and find out what it says. Okay, folks, so here we are. Let's look at these JPEGs. This is the first one. I want you to see this so that you know this is the Ending Crime and Disorder on American Streets. Section 1, Purpose and Policy. The first highlight there is saying that all these things have made our cities unsafe. So I want you to see that this is about cities. This is an order about cities. It almost has no other pertinence to anything else in the country. And then the second highlight there that says the overwhelming, it's talking about the homeless now, the homeless encampments, disorderly conduct there. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, have a mental condition, or both. So we have narrowed down the purpose of this whole thing. We're talking about the homeless encampments who are mentally ill, with mental illness, or with drug or some kind of addictive thing going on. And it wants to shift homeless individuals. Now, this is at the bottom, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment. That's the goal. His goal is to find a way to shift these people off the street into long-term institutional settings. So moving on to the next page, here he's telling the Secretary of, at the very top of the page, take the Secretary of Health and Human Services to take these appropriate actions. In letter I, it's the reversal of federal or state judicial precedents and the termination of consent decrees. So he's ordering them to find ways to take people to court and change the laws to do what he wants, and which is fine. That's something the federal government does all the time. II, which would be number 2, provide assistance to state and local government. Again, funding. That's what he's got. He can give funding through technical guidance, grants, or other legally available means, and implementation of maximally flexible civil commitment, institutional treatment, and step-down treatment standards. In other words, go look every possible way to keep the mentally ill off the streets. Fighting vagrancy on America's streets. And again, I've written out here to redirect funding. But what he says is here, assess their discretionary grant programs and determine priority. So he wants to take grants away from people who don't do what he wants and give them to people who do what he wants. And this is a description, the rest of the page, of what he wants done because he thinks it's best for the solving the homeless problem. This orders the Secretary of Health and Human Services do not fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including so-called harm reduction or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal drug use. So this is basically going to be about methadone programs, I think, and programs like methadone, which give people drugs. And he doesn't like that. He thinks that's a bad thing to do and not helping the problem. And I don't know if it does or not. And down here at the bottom on B, the Attorney General shall prioritize available funding to support the expansion of drug courts and mental health courts for individuals for which such diversion services serves public safety. Okay, so this is section C there at the top. Again, this is going to be about methadone and those kind of things. With respect to recipients of federal housing and homelessness assistance that operate drug injection sites or safe consumption sites, knowingly distribute drug paraphernalia, or permit the use or distribution of illicit drugs on property under their control. The Attorney General shall review whether such recipients are in violation of federal law, and if they are in violation of federal law, then send the FBI in and lock them all up. Of course, I read that in there. Bring civil or criminal actions in appropriate cases, is what he says there. Okay, and this just grabbed my eye, and I thought it was kind of odd. Here at the very end on section E, or letter E, he orders the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development with the Attorney General and Secretary of Health and Human Services to, looking at the top highlight, to collect health-related information that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development identifies as necessary. So he wants to collect health-related information from the homeless. And then in section II, to require those funding recipients to share such data with law enforcement authorities. And then, you know, I wrote down HIPAA here because HIPAA has very strong requirements for medical information distribution. And I would think that if they're requiring HIPAA information, that they would require a court order because, man, that's one of the things that's sacred in this country. But I'm not a lawyer and I don't know anything. And so I might just be displaying my enormous ignorance about the law. This Section 6, General Provisions, it's just legalese, talking about nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect, so on, so on, so on. And we have looked at it, and as far as I can find, there's nothing in here that affects the vast majority of nomads, van lifers, unless you live in a city in your vehicle. And then, boy, I honestly think you could get caught up in this net, and it's possible bad things could happen to you. Okay, so we have looked at the document, and let me summarize what we've said. Basically, this whole bill just says, let's find every way we possibly can legally, through funding, through court orders, through lawsuits, to get as many of the mentally ill and the drug addicted into recovery programs or locked up or off the streets, however you have to do it. Let's do that. And that's basically what the whole order is. It's only going to affect you if you are stealth parking in a city. And then it could. I would just, again, I want to repeat, it definitely could impact your life. You could get caught up in these very loosened laws and orders, and it could be bad for you. So you make your decision on what you want to do. Again, out here, no impact on my life. If you're living in dispersed camping, if you go camping on public land, then you're completely safe. You're unaffected by this law, by this executive order. So I hope that helps you and helps ease your mind and clear up some of the misunderstanding. So if you got anything out of this video, like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll talk to you on the next video.